I predict a Duke's victory.
Boom! Welcome to another episode of the Crush Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts, James and Mr. Michael Dolan. I am sorry for waking you up early, my friend.
It's okay. Nothing gets me going quite like a nice boom in the morning. It doesn't matter how tired I am. I hear boom and I'm locked in. I don't need coffee anymore. I might just have that be my alarm clock. See if I can get that recorded and wake up every morning fired up and ready to go. But probably not
That
as
would
fired
be
up
a
as
funny
you are.
bet. That'd be a funny bet. I think this is good. Our next bet, we should do loser has to have the other one as their alarm clock for a week.
I apologize in advance. I don't want any casualties on this one, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
I think that's a good bet. Okay, next thing that we disagree on, I think that's our...
Well, I think we're going to have some disagreement today. We got another topic that is poised for a little disagreement between the two of us in a little tight end talk. So we might stumble into it sooner than we think.
Yeah, you're rushing into it. You're forgetting about our friend from down under, our little Montezuma.
I would never forget. I'm just getting ahead. So
get ahead. You're excited for tight ends. Tight ends in the morning. What more could you want?
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Take Montezuma, as always, sponsored by Soiree Season. If you're tired of your grandmother's wedding registry, if you want something built for the 20th century, check out Soiree Season. Promo code CrushFF for 40% off. Like the quarterback shows, we're going to split our Montezumas up into 2 episodes. And so Dolan will start us off with this episode. I'll hit mine next episode. So you got to watch both.
Of course. Might as well watch them all while you're at it.
True. You're right. Just scroll through the archive. Yeah, you like the 500 people who somehow watched the Dolan short. I guess our short.
Oh, yeah. Short.
Our short.
We're in the shorts business now.
Dude, we are in the shorts business. I don't not athletic shorts, but the short. I like the shorts business. It's built for this generation. It's the Soiree Season of YouTube content.
That's a good point. Sam was saying.
Sorry.
Well, go ahead and start off my take Montezuma. I think this is a little less of a hot take as much as it is an overreaction. I actually don't think it's an overreaction, but some will call it this. But when we were drafting our teams last week, I was really close to picking the third slot because I knew there was kind of an initial 4 teams that made a lot of sense. An initial 5 teams that made a lot of sense to go pretty chalk. But I actually really, really liked this 6th team. And so almost chose a draft slot just to pick them. And then they traded for Micah Parsons. And so my prediction now is the Green Bay Packers are going to win the Super Bowl. They were kind of my trendy, I want to pick them anyway offense. And now they added, a star of all stars to the defense. I think anytime you add a player of Parsons' caliber, he's a top 10 player across positions, regardless of position, I should say, in the entire league. He's just an absolute game wrecker. I think that offensively, the Packers are a team that can beat you in so many different ways. They have such a strong running offense. They have a ton of different weapons that they can throw at you on the offensive side of the ball, and an extremely good coach and play caller. So I just think that they're such a complete team now. I already loved the offense, and now the defense adds a star like Micah Parsons, and it really does just put me over the top. So I don't know if I'm overreacting. I know one of those stars on offense we're going to be talking about a little bit today in our tight ends section. Yeah. Am I crazy for this, James? Is this too much of an overreaction? I don't know. Maybe it's just my joy of having Micah Parsons out of the NFC East makes me happy, but the fact that he went to another NFC contender scares me a little bit. But where's your head at with this one?
The craziest thing you said in that whole monologue was that we're going to talk about another star on offense today. I don't know if that guy qualifies. I don't think it's crazy. I think the odds were kind of they had the 5th best odds kind of pre-Micah trade. I assume they have the 5th, or maybe they vaulted up to the 4th best odds post-Micah trade. So I think they're swimming in those waters as real Super Bowl contender anyway. And so I don't think you're crazy at all for that. I think besides the Eagles, they're probably the easiest team to like in the NFC. I don't know. It would be really close with the Lions. The thing that is interesting for me in this is the Cowboys management. If you're Jerry and co., This is one of the biggest fumbles that can happen, right? You have a all-pro who wants to be a Cowboy, and to not take care of him, to let him get to this point is kind of a dereliction of duty. This is your job. And it's kind of sad to see, but I know people are going to be hyperbolic and they're going to say this is the end of Jerry. He should, whatever, retire, sell the team, bring in somebody new. But it really is shocking that it came to this point. I was a big believer in the Netflix shows coming out. Jerry just wants headlines.
Building some drama.
Yeah, exactly. He wants headlines and he's going to sign Micah. And the fact that it came down to this, I think is honestly sad for Cowboys fans. And maybe it's just like a testament of this was the last 30 years of what the Cowboys are since the 90s.
Yeah. And I think where I've ultimately netted out on this in the past less than 24 hours is the biggest thing it shows me is the Cowboys have no plan. It's
Zero.
like, this is clearly an emotional decision by Jerry Jones. It was clearly just he dug his heels in because it's like, okay, all offseason he's been saying he's all in. If you're all in, like you don't get rid of a Micah Parsons type player, especially not for draft capital. Like if you want to make an argument, okay, somehow you can do it if he's getting two good, not great players and a draft pick instead of, one startable player and a couple draft picks, I get it. But it makes no sense. Like they have an old quarterback. They have one of the best receivers in this league, one of the best number 2 receivers in this league. So that offense is going to be awesome this year. I don't get it. I just don't get it. It's clearly an ego thing.
His plan was for Micah to play out right this last year, the 5th year, and then to tag him.
It's like, don't do that. Don't
do that. That's not. You don't mess around with like the 3-time All-Pro.
If you're a free agent, why would you ever want to come sign with this team now? I guess because you already get the money up front if you're signing in free agency. But like if you're drafted by the Packers, like you're pumped now. They're like you're pissed now. And you're definitely not going to sign one of those 1-year prove-it deals with Dallas. Like you're.
Yeah.
It's such bad business.
Can I play devil's advocate just for 1 second? I don't know if
I cannot think of the advocates. I can't think of that side.
I don't think I believe it. So even with Micah in 25, you're probably not going anywhere. You're probably the 5th or 6th best team in the NFC with Micah.
Do you think they believe that though?
No, I'm saying what I don't know what they believe. To be honest, I don't know what they believe. So you have to pay him. That was going to happen, right? That amount of money is quarterback money. So it's not cheap. And so when you add that to what you're already paying Dak and CD, that is a ton of money for 3 guys, making it very difficult to build a team around that. I'm not saying impossible, but very difficult. And now you have 4 firsts in the next 2 years, and Kenny Clark is a piece. So you're going to have a really good offense and then some wiggle room on defense, and maybe you have more opportunities to get cheap guys. And the final thing that I'm saying that I don't think I believe is maybe for these kind of star edge rushers, the first 5 to 6 years is the peak. I think Khalil Mack is an example that's been floating around. And so maybe you're getting out at the right time. I don't know. I don't believe most of that. I think Mike is awesome, but I think that would be the devil's advocate. Like the episodes we've done on quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, we're going to do our top 10 tight ends for the 2025 redraft season. This is not at cost. This is just who are going to be, in our opinion, the 10 best tight ends, not taking ADP into account. So Dolan, fire us up.
Yeah. So this is one, as I was mapping it out, I just was pretty surprised how high I have this player ranked. I think this is my most surprising ranking on this list. I actually have Hunter Henry all the way up at tight end 10. Now, granted, I don't think tight end 10 is a bonkers ranking. It's, not something that's going to be a real needle mover anyway. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about the strategy of drafting tight ends early versus late versus mid-round in a bit. At a certain point, you pass the guys who aren't going to truly make a massive difference in your offense, in your fantasy lineup. And so I start to look at, okay, what is it about a situation where a player can give me a decent or respectable floor and have a decent shot at, scoring 2 touchdowns in any given week and give me a few surprises throughout the season. And I keep coming back to that Patriots offense that I think a lot of us are really high on, but all of the pass catchers outside of Travion Henderson are going extremely cheap. Hunter Henry's basically free in drafts, and so I find myself scooping him up quite a bit because I think there's a world where he is Drake May's number 1 target. I think there's a world where he's the number 1 option in the red zone when they decide to throw the ball. And, he's not going to be someone who's breaking a ton of tackles, making a lot happen on his own. But I think if we believe in this Patriots offense, he's going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of that. And he's basically free. And I know we're not talking about cost into this, but he is a guy who, maybe you walked away from your drafts without him, and he's possibly even still on the waiver wire. So if you're listening to this, go pick him up. If you're in a dynasty league and you need a tight end, go through a fourth or a third round pick for him. And I think you're going to be extremely happy. Because I do think he's going to be the most reliable pass catcher in this Patriots offense. And when you're looking at the, low end tight end one spots, all I really want is reliability and the chance to fall into the end zone more often than not.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think when you add cost into it, it's like, okay, I love Hunter Henry at cost. Getting him to the top, I guess the top 10, the argument is he's probably in line to be a top 2 target on his team. I especially do not like Stephon Diggs this year. I think you're a little higher on him. So I think it's going to be a question is he going to be the number 3 target, and Travion and Diggs are both going to be really good? Or does he have a real chance to be that number 2 target? I think last year there's a lot to like. So he wasn't anywhere near a top 10 finish, but he did have almost 100 targets. The receiving touchdowns were actually really low last year, so he only had 2 receiving touchdowns. So you'd have to think just on like natural regression and luck that will increase a little bit. And so yeah, I mean, there's a chance it could come together for Hunter Henry. He could be top 10.
Yeah, but we know with that said, he did not crack your top 10 rankings. Unsurprising, I think he's not in most. So who you got at number 10?
So my number 10 is a guy who finished 4th last year in fantasy points per game, is David Njoku. So David Njoku has been a top 10 tight end in fantasy points these last 3 seasons. So I thought it was a pretty safe bet to put him there, even if I don't like what's around him. So in 2024, he was top 5, number 4th overall. 23, he was 7th, and 22, he was 8th. David Njoku is, I think, a really good football player stuck in a terrible situation with his usage numbers are really good because there's not a lot of target competition. I think Jerry Jeudy's okay. I think he's a pretty good NFL receiver, but I don't think he's somebody who's really, really commanding targets, whereas like Njoku could be that. So I think he was 6th in total targets last year, playing only 11 games. He was 5th in target share. And he was actually 2nd amongst tight ends in expected fantasy points per game. So they do run him a lot of routes. They use him. I think he's a semblance of stability in an otherwise not stable situation. And so I'm actually confident in Njoku with Flacco. I think the downside case is when they inevitably pivot to Dylan Gabriel and or Shedeur Sanders, what that does for Njoku, which is the reason I couldn't have him any higher than 10th on this list, because I think there's so much uncertainty there. But I think you have him a bit higher. Dolan, what do you think?
Yeah, I actually have him in my top 5, which is pretty surprising. But again, I think this is one where after, those big 3 names, I do see a lot of interchangeability. And so there's not a ton. And so I just think when Flacco got named the starter, and granted, I understand that might not last all season, but as of right now, I don't have a strong reason to believe the Browns are going to put Gabriel or Sanders in. And even if they do, it wouldn't surprise me if one of them likes throwing the ball to David Njoku as well. But I do think that he's the guy that this passing attack is going to run through. I think they're going to be pretty run heavy in general, but I think that's going to lead to a lot of play action and stuff where it's easy to kind of slip Njoku out, get him in space. And I think, when we saw him with Flacco a couple years ago, he was very clearly his favorite target, and he was more notably a big downfield target for them. So I think when you do have that potential number 1 pass catching role in the offense, and I think at worst number 2 option, even if it's a bad offense, I'll take that because again, after those big 3 tight ends, I'm really just looking for some stability and touchdown upside. And I think when you sprinkle in the big plays and what I believe is going to be a pretty solid role for Njoku, that's worthy of a top 5 pick for me. I don't feel great about it. I think he's in the range of the draft where I'm still avoiding him, even though I have him ranked pretty highly, just because I prefer other names there. And I do like some other tight ends later, a la Hunter Henry, who I can get basically for free. But if Njoku does fall, I have no problem pouncing on him and saying he's going to be my tight end 1 and kind of locked in for the season. He's in my tier of this is a guy that I don't need to worry about streaming. I just feel good about putting in and week out. And, more often than not, at least having a puncher's chance at winning the tight end matchup on the week unless I'm facing one of those big three guys.
Yeah. Only one top tight end total points finish in all 8 seasons is my worry. It's like he's only put it together once, and so are we really trusting him to put it together in a year when the Browns are probably going to be one of the 3 worst teams in the league? And I believe that quarterback rotation's for sure happening. If you have the Flacco stability all year, I think 10 is probably his floor, but I just don't see that happening.
I'll keep us moving to number 9 on my list. So this is another guy who, similar to Hunter Henry, I just really like the potential role in the offense and touchdown upside that comes with him. And that is Mark Andrews, a guy that a lot of people have been fading lately, but I don't fully understand. I think there's a world where he is Lamar Jackson's favorite target, at the very least in the red zone. I think too many people are caught up on, that drop 2-point conversion at the end of the year and just have a sour taste in their mouth with Mark Andrews. But he's been one of the best tight ends in football for many years now. And at the end of the day, I like getting pieces of offenses that are going to absolutely dominate. And I think every sign out there says that's exactly going to be the Ravens. So it would not surprise me if Mark Andrews bounces back again this year. I know he had the really slow start last year, but that was, coming off a car crash and things of that nature. All signs point to him being healthy to start the season. And you maybe even get the little added bonus of the fact that Isaiah Likely is not. So Andrews could have an even bigger role. I don't think he's going to be one of those guys competing for the lead in catches and targets. But at the bottom end of my top 10, it wouldn't surprise me if this is a double-digit touchdown guy. And I'm willing to make that bet on Mark Andrews, especially now that his cost has been so suppressed this year.
Yeah. The reason I don't have him is pretty simple. I think last year was a diversion of what has made him successful the rest of his career. So he only had less than 70 targets, only 55 catches last year, which is not kind of what you think of as Mark Andrews' number 1 weapon for the Ravens. In a year where the Ravens' passing offense has been essentially the best it's ever been. And so I don't know what exactly changed. You mentioned the car crash. Maybe it was that. But he did not look like the same person. And I think the numbers minus the touchdowns reflected that. So I think the touchdowns are likely to come down. And unless he gets back to the player he used to be, which is possible, right? Maybe last year was a blip for whatever reason, and maybe he's back. But there was something concerning about the way he was moving last year and the way they used him, that the touchdown numbers kind of sustained the floor. And if those touchdown numbers come down, then we could be looking at what's kind of a downward slope for Mark Andrews.
Yeah, and I totally get that. I think a lot of people don't have him inside their top 10. For me, I'm just trying to overthink it. I liked it, Fred, at the end of the season, and again, I love the offense.
Yeah. Okay. My 9th guy on the list is Mr. Evan Ingram. So Evan Ingram is now a Denver Bronco. So I think we've seen the ceiling with the player that Evan Ingram has become in these past 2 years with the Jags. So he was 4th fantasy points per game in 23 while only scoring 4 touchdowns. So he is, like Mark Andrews used to be, a high target, high catches kind of tight end and less of a touchdown dependent tight end. He led all tight ends in targets in his really good year 2 years ago. He's a really good kind of crafty, let's call it slot receiver. In his old age, he finds the weaknesses in the defense, in sync with the quarterback, and can really find open space. He's a lot of the low ADOT stuff. I think he had 5 yards per catch 2 years ago. And I just think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in this Sean Payton offense. So we know Cortland Sutton's probably the number 1. I think it's not clear who the number 2 is. And when you look for tight end upside, that's what you want. You want at least a top 2 target in the offense. And so I think there's a good case for Evan Ingram to be that top 2 target. The only thing that would concern me is a kind of what we talked about before with the Broncos, where their defense is so good, they're going to lean on the run, and they're not going to have to throw the ball a lot. And I just said Evan Ingram is a kind of volume play, or he has been. And so if the Broncos don't lean into that, then I think there's a possibility that Evan Ingram doesn't hit his ceiling. But I also think there's a possibility that he is a number 2 target.
Yeah, and I think the one thing, we haven't given this caveat much in our rankings, but we both operate under the 0.5 PPR assumption. I think Evan Ingram, more so than anybody else on this list, is someone who would probably bump up a few pegs if we're talking full PPR and bump down quite a few if we're talking, zero PPR standard leagues. But I had Evan Ingram at 8 on my list. And I think you outlined it really well. I think the only thing that I'll add, because I agree with everything you said, is he's not someone who's going to make anything happen after he catches the ball in his hands. Like he breaks no tackles. He gets, no yards after catch unless he's, really schemed up, which we actually saw that happen in the preseason. I think he had a good, 40, 50 yarder or so when there was nothing
58.
but green grass in front of him. Yeah. But I am lower than him by a touch, I think, than consensus. And, I think the Njoku comparison's the one I'll touch on, is I think they both have the opportunity to be that number one, number two guy in the offense. And even if the offense is relatively low volume, I think if you have a large enough slice of that pie, you're going to be stable enough from week to week. I just think when I look at those two side to side, I trust Njoku's ability a lot more to just make plays on his own and to eat up some chunk gains that can accumulate points in a hurry. And I just think Evan Ingram's sole calling card is volume, less so the talent and playmaking ability. And so that's why I have him a tier below alongside those guys like Hunter Henry and Mark Andrews.
Makes sense. The other thing is, I think the underrated part of Evan Ingram's possible success is kind of the RJ Harvey piece. If they're using him to create mismatches, a la Alvin Kamara, right? I think that could take away from some of what would make Evan Ingram special. So if they divide up who they're scheming targets for in the middle of the field between Harvey and Evan Ingram, that could limit the ceiling as well. All right, let's keep it moving. I think you're up, right, Dolan? Yeah, I think you're up next.
Yep, and I think this is one that I'm definitely noticeably lower on than consensus, but this is where we enter my weekly starters tier. So this is where Njoku was. So we've covered my 10, 9, 8 already. And at 7, I have TJ Hawkinson. And I know that this is a guy that you're really high on. So I'm interested to hear where you ultimately put him on your rankings.
Yep.
But I think this is, again, where we start to talk about the guys who can make plays on their own. I think TJ Hawkinson is an awesome, awesome talent. But I do worry about his role in the offense because, we just talked about a couple offenses where the slice of the pie, the overall size of the pie, I should say, is a little concerning because of some potential run-heavy offenses. And I am, pretty bullish on the idea that Minnesota is going to run the ball a ton. I think they do want to protect J.J. McCarthy. I think their investments they made in the offensive line and the running back room this offseason suggest that. And I think at very best, you're hoping TJ Hawkinson can be a number 2 in that offense. But I think when Addison returns, it's a lot more likely he's a number 3. And so I do get scared of guys that are number 3s in low volume offenses, a lot more so than number 2s, even if I really like the talent as a player. And I do think, the Addison suspension's 3 games, but I do think, especially with the addition of Adam Thielen, I think early season, he's going to eat into that as well. And so if there's now not 2, but 3 receivers potentially fighting for him with targets, I get pretty scared about the volume, even though I love the player and the talent. So for the most part, I'm letting a lot of other people draft TJ Hawkinson. I would love to see him in another situation where he can be more of a focal point. I just don't see that happening in Minnesota this year.
Yeah. I think for me, TJ Hawkinson's the forgotten guy. The mix of, so he goes down 2 years ago at the end of the year with the ACL injury, and then he kind of comes back halfway through last season as a more hobbled version of himself that they were trying to slow in the offense. But people are forgetting how good of an NFL football player TJ Hawkinson is. In 2023, before he got hurt, he was top 5 in fantasy points per game. That's 2 seasons in a row. But in that Kevin O'Connell offense, a year being removed from the ACL, so I don't think there's any reason to think that the injury is going to slow him down anymore. And I've been on record, I think I like the Vikings offense, and JJ McCarthy might need a safety blanket over the middle. And so if that's something that, if there's a chemistry there and he leans on Hawkinson a little more than, say, an Addison or, God forbid, a Justin Jefferson on the outside, that I think it could lead to the volume where I think you think is the biggest concern. I am a little concerned. The part last year, like, they really slowed him in. And so I'm choosing to throw out all of last year. I think he was 44th in snap share, 30th in route participation, and he didn't score any touchdowns. I'm willing to throw that out because we've seen it before and that they're going to ramp him back up and he's going to be like the 2023 version on a good Kevin O'Connell offense.
Yeah, I definitely see the upside. It's just not the archetype that I like to bet on in redraft leagues. I think he's a great play in Dynasty because you hope, hey, what happens if they don't re-sign Addison next year
Yeah, that's a
and
good point.
Thielen's gone? And so, that's where I like to bet on the talent a lot. I just think this is not the year for me with Hawkinson, but I totally see the argument. I totally see the scenario where talent just wins out, and I look like an idiot for having him this low.
Yeah. All right. For sake of time, we're going to go to my next guy. My next guy is probably the hottest of the late round sleepers in like the fantasy community. So I have Tucker Kraft at, I think it's 7. So I've Tucker Kraft, and this is the star you were talking about earlier, right? I think the argument for Tucker Kraft is you're getting an ascending player in an ascending offense. So Tucker Kraft showed kind of a big jump from year 1 to year 2. And I think you're betting that there's enough there in year 2 that he's going to make a big jump from year 2 to year 3. So far in his NFL career, Tucker Kraft has made the most of his opportunities. So he was only 16th among tight ends last year in targets, but 7th in receiving yards and tied for 4th in touchdowns. So that's someone who's not getting the looks you'd want, but he's making the most out of the looks he's getting. So he's 5th in yards after the catch, and he's number 2 in yards per route run. So I think this is a bet, probably a good bet, that Jordan Love's going to be healthy all year. There isn't an established number 1 in the offense. Does a lot with the ball in his hands and will be a big factor in an offense that we think is going to be very good. And that's why I have him number 7 on my list.
Yeah. And I do have him at 6. And I think this is the guy who I'm targeting more so than anyone in drafts this year. But regardless of, I think he's a great, great, great buy at an affordable price in dynasty leagues. Yep. And you can get him as, close to the 10th tight end off the board in redraft settings. But I just absolutely love the talent. And like you said, I think, and like we talked about in Take Montezuma section, I'm extremely high on this Packers offense. And it is because they're going to be so multiple and they have so many different options they can throw at you. But at the end of the day, I think Jordan Love is going to need to find a go-to guy. Every once in a while, it's just going to be 3rd and 5. And it's like you throw the scheme out the window, all this other stuff, you just get the ball to your guy. And I think that's going to be Tucker Kraft. And I think the reason I've referred to him as a potential star earlier is I think it's going to happen. And it's simply because of what he does with the ball in his hands. You're much better at bringing data to these shows than me, but I had to bring, a couple of data points that really emulate how dominant I think Tucker Kraft can be. So looking at all tight ends in yards after contact per reception, yards after catch per reception, Tucker Kraft was basically lapping the field. He led the league with 9.1 yards after contact per reception. Next on the list is George Kittle, and he's all the way down at 6.7 yards after catch. And so that is a huge gap. I mean, think about, you throw a little screen pass to Tucker Kraft and you're basically getting a first down. And then you look further at yards after contact, not just after catch, and it's 4. He averages a flat 4.0 yards after contact. So it doesn't matter if there's someone near him. He's still picking up multiple yards. He breaks so many tackles at an absurd rate. And again, to put some more context behind the after contact numbers, once again, Kittle is number 2 on that list with 2.4. So he's just picking up so many yards on his own that I'm just so bullish on him becoming the guy in that offense, in what's going to be an ascending offense. And he's the kind of guy that would not surprise me one bit if we're looking back next year and he's in the conversation of those elite tight ends, because I'm so bought in on the talent and the offensive ecosystem around him. I think is going to be great. And I think there's just going to be a ton of touchdown opportunity in Green Bay this year that I could very easily see Kraft cashing in on.
Yep. They got to give him more routes and a couple more targets. I think we're both totally aligned on Tucker Kraft. He's one of my favorites. I think probably my favorite.
That's it for my 6 through 10.
Gotcha.
We have hit them all. So do we want to close us out here and save the top 5 for next episode? Or is there anybody else on your 6 through 10 we haven't hit yet?
Yeah, so I actually have one more, but I'm going to talk about my 4 as well. I'm just going to talk about these guys together. So I actually have the rookies 4th and 6th on my list. So Colson Loveland 4th and Tyler Warren 6th. And let's just talk about them together. The way the fantasy community used to approach this is, rookie tight end, you have to give them 2 or 3 years to get used to the NFL, the blocking to really earn the routes run. That has completely been flipped on his head these last 2 years, with Brock Bowers and Sam Laporta being the number 1 tight end for 2 years running. And so I think what you have right now are two guys who were drafted in the early first round, who have shown in the preseason that they are going to be a priority for these offenses. I know, at least for the Bears, a lot of people say, and honestly for the Colts to a lesser extent, there's a lot of target competition. I think Ben Johnson drafted Colson Loveland in the top 10 to get him the ball. So we can talk about all we want with DJ Moore or Rome Odunze. I think Colson Loveland will actually be the one of like the four that's going to always be there, and he's going to run a ton of routes. Both of these guys are essentially receivers. I know we're labeling them as tight ends, and same with Tyler Warren. I don't think Josh Downs, Michael Pittman should scare you at all. Daniel Jones has a propensity to throw the ball short over the middle of the field, so I like both of the rookies a ton for their ceiling outcomes. I'm not saying there's not risk here, but when you're drafting tight end late, you're looking for Brock Bowers or you're looking for Sam Laporta. You're not looking for Hunter Henry. At least I'm not. And so that's why I would be really comfortable taking a shot on both of these rookies. And I think they honestly have pretty high floors as well, just because how I think they're going to be used.
Yeah, this is where you and I disagree the most. I am still in the camp of rookie tight ends are not a bet that I want to make more often than not. I do have Warren ranked slightly higher than Loveland, 12 and 14 respectively. It is because of the situation. I think when we've seen some of the Laportas and the Bowers break out in year one, for Laporta, it was huge touchdown upside, which I guess I can squint and see that for the Bears and Loveland. But I do think the target competition there scares me a lot. I think, Odunze is going to be a red zone monster of his own. Obviously, DJ Moore is extremely proven. They already like Cole Kmet there. So I think for Loveland, it's just the target competition is too much for me, even if the offense, does take a step forward under Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. As we enter this new regime, I do have a bit more excitement towards Warren for a lot of the reasons that I explained with Kraft. I think he could be one of those guys who is just dominant with the ball in his hands. But people are acting like he's going to walk into a number one role in that offense. And I don't really believe that. I just think the Colts passing attack and offense in general is going to be pretty bad. And I think Warren's more in the Bowers archetype where you're kind of hoping for him to lead the team in catches and targets right away, which Bowers had every opportunity to do last year. And I guess Warren has a better chance at Loveland at it. But I still think Michael Pittman's a guy. I still think they really like Josh Downs. I think they're hoping to see Adonai Mitchell break out this year. And I think he's had a pretty decent camp and all signs point towards he's trending in the right direction. So I do think the target competition is going to be a little murky in a bad offense. So I just find myself fading these two this year because I do think the Bowers, Laporta situations are more so outliers than the norm now. In redraft settings, I find myself staying away and letting others take the risk there.
Yep. I hear you. I think there's a lot of risk, to be fair, right? I just think you can make an upside case for both of these guys that's higher than at least the first guys we talked about. So maybe in that kind of Tucker Kraft range. All right, crush, dude, tight ends. Crush tight ends in the morning. Episode 15. All right, Dolan.
16, right?
Yeah, 16.
Am I crazy? 16?
Nah, I think it's 16. No, I always lose count. Are we counting shorts in it? If we count shorts, it's
No, not counting shorts. Not counting shorts. Our new favorite.
16. Our tight ends 10 through 6 for the 2025 redraft season. Talk soon, my friend. Get that Micah money.
Peace.